Millionaire's wheelchair-bound daughter sees girl begging for food and shocks everyone. Could she be my sister? Please like this video and leave a comment below. Your support means everything to us and helps share these powerful stories of hope and redemption with more people who need to hear them. A wealthy man's darkest secret comes to light when his disabled daughter asks one simple question. But some truths are worth more than all the money in the world. The Sterling mansion stood like a fortress against the Seattle skyline, its towering walls hiding secrets darker than the storm clouds gathering overhead. Inside the marble-lined corridors, 16-year-old Emma Sterling navigated her wheelchair through the cold, empty halls that had been her prison for the past 4 years. "Emma, your physical therapy session is in 20 minutes, called Margaret, the stern housekeeper who had raised her since her mother's death 6 years ago. Emma's father, Richard Sterling, was nowhere to be found, as usual. The pharmaceutical empire he'd built consumed his every waking moment, leaving little room for a daughter he could barely look at. The accident that put Emma in the wheelchair had changed everything. One moment she was running through these same halls, laughing and full of life, and the next she was trapped in a hospital bed, her legs forever silenced. Richard's guilt manifested as distance, his love buried beneath layers of regret and pharmaceutical work that kept him away from home 18 hours a day. "I don't want therapy today," Emma said, steering her chair toward the massive windows overlooking the city. Something had been gnawing at her for weeks, a restlessness that made the mansion feel even more suffocating than usual. Margaret approached with the familiar look of someone who'd given up trying to understand the Sterling family dynamics. "Your father wants you to maintain your strength. Dr. Morrison says, 'My father wants a lot of things,'" Emma interrupted, her green eyes flashing with a defiance that reminded Margaret of Emma's mother, Victoria. "But he never asks what I want." The housekeeper softened slightly. In 6 years she'd watched this bright-spirited girl slowly dim under the weight of isolation and her father's emotional absence. "What do you want, sweetheart?" Emma turned back to the window, watching normal people live normal lives on the streets below. "I want to go outside, not to another appointment, not to another specialist. I want to see the city. I want to remember what the world feels like." Margaret hesitated. Richard's instructions were clear. Emma was to be kept safe, protected, monitored. After the accident, he'd become obsessively protective, as if keeping her locked away could somehow undo the damage that had already been done. My father won't even know I'm gone," Emma said, and the sadness in her voice broke Margaret's heart. It was true. Richard had left for a 3-day business conference that morning, his goodbye a distant nod as he spoke into his phone about merger details. For the first time in 4 years, Emma Sterling would taste freedom. But she had no idea that this single act of rebellion would shatter everything she thought she knew about her family, her accident, and the father who claimed to love her while keeping her prisoner in their gilded cage. The wheels of her chair squeaked against the marble as she headed toward the front door, each revolution carrying her closer to a truth that would change everything. Downtown Seattle bustled with afternoon energy as Emma's hired driver, James, pushed her wheelchair along the crowded sidewalks. She'd convinced Margaret to let her visit the art museum, but the moment they arrived, Emma knew she needed more than sanitized culture. She needed real life. "James, could we walk around the Pike Place Market? I want to see the flowers," she asked, her voice carrying a hope that the elderly driver couldn't resist. "Your father would have my head, Miss Emma, but—" James looked at her face, really looked, and saw a 16-year-old girl who'd been locked away from the world for too long. 20 minutes, that's all. The market exploded with sensory overload, vendors calling out prices, the smell of fresh fish and coffee, tourists laughing and haggling. Emma felt more alive than she had in years. Her wheelchair moved easily through the crowd, and for the first time since the accident, she didn't feel like people were staring at her with pity. That's when she saw her. Huddled between 2 vendor stalls sat a little girl, maybe 8 years old, with tangled dark hair and clothes that had seen too many nights on the street. She held a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry," in shaky child's handwriting. But it wasn't the sign that stopped Emma cold. It was the girl's face, the same green eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. Emma stared, her heart hammering against her ribs as impossible thoughts flooded her mind. "James," she whispered, unable to look away from the child. "Do you see that little girl?" James followed her gaze and frowned. "Street kid. Shame, really. Happens more than people like to think about in this city." Emma watched as passers-by dropped coins into a small cup beside the girl, most not even making eye contact. The child's dignity in the face of humiliation reminded Emma of someone. Herself, maybe, or... "She looks like someone I know," Emma said slowly, her voice barely audible above the market noise. The little girl looked up suddenly, as if sensing she was being watched. When their eyes met across the crowded space, something electric passed between them. Recognition, impossible. Emma had never seen this child before in her life. But the feeling was undeniable, primal, like looking into a mirror that reflected not just her face but her soul. James checked his watch nervously. "Miss Emma, we really should be getting back. Your therapy appointment?" "No." Emma's voice was stronger now, more certain. "I need to talk to her. Your father would..." "My father isn't here." Emma began moving her wheelchair toward the girl, her pulse racing with each push of the wheels. She had no idea what she was going to say, but she knew with absolute certainty that walking away wasn't an option. The little girl watched her approach with wariness that broke Emma's heart. How many adults had disappointed this child? How many had walked past without seeing her humanity? "Hi," Emma said softly when she was close enough. "I'm Emma." The girl studied her for a long moment before responding. "I'm Lily." Her voice was small, but strong, carrying a maturity that 8-year-olds shouldn't possess. Emma looked into those familiar green eyes and felt her world tilt on its axis. The question that formed in her mind was crazy, impossible, but it forced its way out anyway. "Lily, do you know who your father is?" Lily's small face crumpled with confusion and something that looked like hope. "I don't. My mama said he was rich." "That he didn't want me." She touched the worn silver locket around her neck, the only possession that seemed to matter to her. Emma's hands trembled as she stared at the child. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't coincidence. "What's your last name, Lily?" "Morrison, Lily Morrison." The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "But Mama said that wasn't my real daddy's name. She said my real daddy had lots of money and a big house, but he never wanted to meet me." Emma's blood turned to ice. Morrison, the name of their family doctor, the man who'd treated her after the accident. The pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know existed began forming in her mind. "Lily, how old are you?" 8. I'll be 9 on Christmas Day." Emma did the math quickly. 8 years ago, her mother Victoria had been fighting the cancer that would eventually take her life. She'd been in and out of hospitals, leaving Richard alone for weeks at a time. Emma had been 8 herself, too young to understand the strain on her parents' marriage, too young to see the cracks forming in their perfect life. "Where's your mother now?" Emma asked gently. Lily's face darkened. "She went away 2 weeks ago. Said she couldn't take care of me anymore, left me with her boyfriend, but he..." She touched her arm where a fading bruise was barely visible. "I ran away." Rage flooded through Emma, not at this innocent child, but at a system that had failed her, at a mother who'd abandoned her, and at a growing suspicion about her own father that made her stomach twist with nausea. "James," Emma called, never taking her eyes off Lily. "I need you to take us home." "Miss Emma, your father..." "My father needs to see something," Emma said, her voice carrying a steel that surprised even her. "Lily, would you like to come with me? Just for a little while. I have food, and it's warm." The little girl looked between Emma and James with the calculating gaze of someone who'd learned early that adults couldn't always be trusted. But something in Emma's face, maybe the genuine care, maybe the recognition of shared loneliness, made her nod slowly. As James helped Lily into the car, Emma noticed the locket again. "That's pretty." "Where did you get it?" Lily clutched it protectively. "Mama gave it to me, said it was from my real daddy. She said there's a picture inside, but it's stuck shut." Emma's world spun. Her mother had worn an identical locket, a family heirloom that Victoria had treasured. After her death, Richard had claimed it was lost, that it must have been misplaced during one of her hospital stays. But here it was, hanging around the neck of a homeless 8-year-old who looked exactly like Emma had at that age. The drive back to the Sterling mansion passed in a blur. Emma held Lily's small, dirty hand and felt pieces of her life rearranging themselves. Everything she thought she knew about her family, her accident, her father's grief, it was all built on lies. As the car pulled through the iron gates of the estate, Lily's eyes widened with wonder and fear. "This is where you live?" "Yes," Emma said, squeezing her hand. "And I think it might be where you belong too." The mansion loomed before them, its windows dark and unwelcoming. But for the first time in 4 years, Emma wasn't returning home as a prisoner. She was coming back as a detective, and she was about to uncover the truth that would either destroy her family or finally heal it. The question that had started as impossible was becoming terrifyingly real. Was Lily Morrison actually Lily Sterling? The Sterling mansion's kitchen had never felt more cavernous than it did watching Lily devour her 3rd sandwich, with the desperation of someone who hadn't eaten in days. Margaret bustled around them, her initial shock at Emma's unexpected guest giving way to maternal instincts that Emma had rarely seen. "Slow down, sweetheart," Margaret said gently, placing a glass of milk beside Lily's plate. "There's plenty more." Emma studied every detail of Lily's face as she ate. The way she wrinkled her nose when thinking, identical to Emma's own habit. The small scar above her left eyebrow that matched the one Emma had from falling off her bike at age 6. Even the way Lily held her fork was familiar. "Lily," Emma said carefully, "can you tell me more about your mother? What did she look like?" Lily swallowed hard. "Pretty. She had blonde hair like yours, but not as long, and she cried a lot, especially when she talked about my real daddy." She touched the locket again. "She said he broke her heart, and that's why she had to go away." Margaret glanced at Emma with growing concern. The housekeeper had worked for the Sterling family for 12 years. She'd been there through Victoria's illness, Richard's increasing distance, and Emma's accident. She'd also noticed Richard's frequent late nights and mysterious phone calls during Victoria's final year. "Emma, dear, perhaps we should call your father." "No." Emma's voice was sharp. "Not yet. First, I need to see what's in that locket." Lily's hands flew protectively to her neck. "It's stuck. Mama tried to open it lots of times, but it never worked." "May I try? I promise I'll be very careful." After a long moment, Lily nodded and lifted the chain over her head. The locket was indeed identical to the one Emma remembered her mother wearing, antique silver with tiny engraved roses around the edge. Emma's fingers found a small clasp that was nearly invisible. "There's a trick to it," Emma murmured, remembering watching her mother open it countless times. "You have to press here and slide at the same time." The locket opened with a soft click. Inside was a photograph that made Emma's heart stop. A much younger Richard Sterling smiled back at her, his arm around a woman Emma didn't recognize. Blonde, pretty, with Lily's exact features. But it was the date engraved on the inside of the locket that sent shockwaves through Emma's system. December 25th, forever yours. Lily's birthday was Christmas Day. "That's him," Lily whispered, pointing at Richard's photograph. "That's my real daddy." Margaret gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Sweet Mary and Joseph. Emma's mind raced through the timeline. 8 years ago, her mother had been dying. Richard had been distant, working longer hours, claiming the stress of Victoria's illness was overwhelming him. Emma had assumed his absence was grief, but what if it had been guilt? What if he'd been living a double life, finding comfort in another woman's arms while his wife fought for her life? "Emma," Margaret said quietly, "your father will be back from his conference tonight." "Good." Emma's voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. "It's time for some answers." She looked at Lily, who was studying the photograph with tears in her eyes. This innocent child had spent 8 years wondering why her father didn't want her, living with a mother who was clearly struggling with her own demons, and now she was homeless and hungry because the adults in her life had failed her completely. "Lily, would you like to stay here tonight? In a real bed with clean clothes and as much food as you want?" Lily's eyes widened with hope and disbelief. "Really? But what if your daddy doesn't want me here?" Emma felt a cold determination settle in her chest. Then my daddy and I are going to have a very serious conversation about what it means to be a father. As the afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen windows, Emma made a silent promise to the little girl who was almost certainly her half-sister. She would uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it was. She would make Richard answer for his choices, and she would make sure that Lily never felt unwanted again. But first, she needed to prepare for the confrontation that would either save their family or destroy it completely. Richard Sterling had built his fortune on keeping secrets. Tonight, those secrets would finally see the light. The sound of tires on gravel announced that her father was home early. The sound of Richard Sterling's footsteps echoed through the marble foyer like a countdown to Judgment Day. Emma positioned her wheelchair between Lily and the kitchen entrance, her heart hammering as she heard his voice calling for Margaret. "Margaret! I need the Yamamoto contracts from my study," and Richard's voice cut off abruptly as he appeared in the doorway and saw the scene before him. His face went through a series of transformations: confusion, recognition, and then a terrible, guilty understanding that confirmed every suspicion Emma had harbored. For a moment, the pharmaceutical magnate who commanded boardrooms and controlled millions of dollars looked like nothing more than a man whose worst nightmare had come true. "Emma," he said slowly, his eyes fixed on Lily, who had instinctively moved closer to Emma's chair. "Who is this?" "I think you know exactly who this is, Dad." Emma's voice was steady, but her hands gripped her wheelchair's armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. "Her name is Lily Morrison. She's 8 years old, born on Christmas Day. She's been living on the streets for 2 weeks. Richard's face had gone ashen. "Emma, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Really?" Emma held up the opened locket. "Because she has this with your picture in it. A picture of you with a woman who isn't Mum." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily pressed herself against Emma's chair, sensing the tension even if she didn't fully understand it. Margaret stood frozen by the counter, her loyalties torn between the family she'd served for 12 years and the innocent child in front of her. "Daddy," Lily said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the adult standoff. "It's really you." Richard closed his eyes as if the word caused him physical pain. When he opened them again, Emma saw something she'd never seen before. Her father looked broken. "Emma, take her upstairs, give her a bath, some clean clothes. We'll talk after she's asleep." "No." Emma's voice rang with authority. "We'll talk now. Lily deserves to know the truth. She spent 8 years wondering why her father didn't want her." "You don't understand? Then explain it to me." Emma's composure finally cracked. "Explain how you could have another daughter and leave her to starve on the streets. Explain how you could betray Mom while she was dying. Explain how you could look at me every day knowing that you have another child out there who needs you." Richard ran his hands through his graying hair. "Your mother. Victoria was sick for so long. The doctors said she might not make it, and I was falling apart. Sandra, Lily's mother, she worked at the hospital. She was kind and I was weak, and one thing led to another." "So you had an affair," Emma said coldly. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake that I've regretted every day since." "I'm not a mistake," Lily said quietly, but with a dignity that made Emma's heart ache. "My mama said I was the best thing that ever happened to her." Richard looked at his younger daughter for the first time since entering the room, really looked at her, and Emma saw his resolve crumble completely. "No, sweetheart, you're not a mistake. You're perfect." "Then why didn't you want me?" It was the question that destroyed him. Richard Sterling, who had built an empire through ruthless determination, broke down completely in his own kitchen. "Because I was a coward. Because I thought if I pretended you didn't exist, I could somehow undo what I'd done to your mother, to Victoria, to Emma. I was wrong about everything." Emma watched her father cry for the first time in her life and felt her anger mixing with pity. "Mom knew, didn't she?" Richard nodded miserably. "She found out right before she died. She made me promise to take care of you both, but after the funeral, I couldn't face what I'd done. I sent Sandra money, told myself that was enough. I was wrong." "You sent money?" Lily's voice was small and confused. "Mama always said we didn't have money for food sometimes." Richard's face darkened with realization. Sandra's boyfriend. She must have. God, what have I done? The room fell silent, except for the sound of Richard's quiet sobs. Emma looked between her father and the little girl who was undeniably her sister, and felt the weight of a decision that would define the rest of their lives. "Lily," she said gently, "would you like to meet your big sister properly?" Lily's face lit up with wonder. "You're my sister?" "I think so. And if Dad agrees, I think you should stay here with us forever." Richard looked up at Emma with eyes full of gratitude and shame. "Emma, We'll figure it out," Emma said firmly, "but Lily comes first now. She's been hurt enough." As if sensing that the crisis had passed, Lily moved from behind Emma's chair and, with the fearless trust of a child, walked straight to Richard and hugged his legs. "Hi, Daddy," she said simply. Richard knelt down and held his daughter for the first time, and Emma realized that some truths, no matter how painful, were worth uncovering. Their family had been broken, but maybe, just maybe, it could be healed. But late that night, as Emma lay awake thinking about everything that had happened, one question nagged at her. If her father had been sending money all these years, where had it gone? And why had Lily's mother suddenly abandoned her now? The answers to those questions would prove more disturbing than anything they discovered so far. 3 weeks had passed since Lily's arrival, and the Sterling mansion had transformed from a mausoleum into something resembling a home. Emma had moved into the larger bedroom next to Lily's, spending hours teaching her sister to read, playing games, and watching the hollow look fade from those familiar green eyes. Richard had thrown himself into being a father with the same intensity he'd once reserved for business deals. He'd hired tutors, bought toys, and even started coming home for dinner every night. But Emma noticed the phone calls, hushed conversations that ended abruptly when she entered a room, meetings that ran later than they should, and most troubling of all, the envelope of cash she'd seen him handling in his study. "Emma," Lily said one morning as they worked on her reading lesson, "why do you think my mama really left me?" It was a question that had been haunting Emma as well. Sandra Morrison's sudden abandonment of her daughter didn't fit with the picture Richard had painted of a struggling but loving mother. Something was missing from their story. "I don't know, sweetheart, but you're safe now, that's what matters." Margaret appeared in the doorway with that expression Emma had learned to recognize, the one that meant trouble. "Emma, dear, there's a woman here to see your father. She says it's about Lily." Emma's blood ran cold. What kind of woman? Young, blonde, quite upset, I'd say. Through the front windows, Emma could see Richard's car pulling into the circular drive. He was returning from another of his mysterious errands, and the timing felt orchestrated. "Lily, go to your room and play with your dollhouse, okay? I'll come get you in a little while." Emma positioned herself where she could see the front door, her heart racing as she heard voices in the foyer. A woman was crying, and Richard's voice was low and urgent. "Can't just show up here, Sandra. We had an agreement." "The agreement's changed, Richard. Marcus wants more money or he's going to the press. He knows about Lily, knows about your precious reputation." Emma's blood turned to ice. Sandra, Lily's mother, was here, and she was talking about money and threats. "You got your daughter back," Richard said. "Isn't that enough?" "I never wanted her back." Sandra's voice rose, and Emma heard Lily's footsteps on the stairs above. Her little sister was listening too. "This was always about the money, Richard, you know that." Emma's world tilted as the pieces fell into place. Sandra hadn't abandoned Lily out of desperation. She'd abandoned her as part of some kind of scheme, and now she was back wanting more money, using Lily as leverage. 50,000, Sandra continued. "That's what Marcus wants to keep quiet about your affair, about the daughter you've been hiding. 50,000, or the Seattle Times gets a very interesting story about the pharmaceutical magnate who abandoned his illegitimate child." Emma's hands shook with rage. Lily hadn't been abandoned. She'd been used. Her own mother had left her on the streets as part of a blackmail scheme, knowing that eventually Richard would have to take her in, knowing that his guilt and reputation would make him pay anything to keep the secret buried. "And what about Lily?" Richard asked, and Emma heard the pain in his voice. "What about what this does to her?" "Lily's fine. She's got her rich daddy now, doesn't she? But I've got debts, Richard. Marcus has debts. Your conscience is going to cost you. Emma made her decision. She rolled her wheelchair into the foyer, where Sandra Morrison stood with her hand out, waiting for blood money. Up close, Emma could see that Lily's mother was nothing like the struggling woman she'd imagined. Her clothes were expensive, her nails professionally done, her desperation the manufactured kind that came from greed, not need. "Hello, Sandra," Emma said calmly. "I'm Emma, Lily's big sister." Sandra whirled around, her eyes calculating as she took in Emma's wheelchair and obviously affluent appearance. "I didn't know Richard had another daughter." "There's a lot you don't know," Emma said. "For instance, did you know that Lily can hear you from upstairs? Did you know that she's been crying herself to sleep, wondering why her mother didn't love her enough to keep her? Did you know that she thinks it's her fault you left?" For the first time, Sandra looked uncomfortable. "Look, kid, this is between your father and me." "No," Emma interrupted. "This is about Lily. And I want you to know something, Sandra. If you ever come near my sister again, if you ever try to use her to get money from my father, if you ever make her feel unwanted again, I will destroy you." Sandra laughed nervously. "You're just a kid in a wheelchair. What could you possibly—" "I'm Richard Sterling's daughter," Emma said with quiet steel. "I have resources you can't imagine, connections you'll never have, and a very good reason to hate you. Test me." Richard stared at his older daughter with newfound respect and something that looked like pride. "Sandra, you have 10 minutes to get off my property. If I see you again, I'm calling the police. You'll regret this, Richard. Marcus won't just disappear." "Let me worry about Marcus," Richard said. "Emma's right. This ends now." As Sandra slammed the door behind her, Emma realized that saving Lily wasn't just about giving her a home. It was about protecting her from people who would use an innocent child's need for love as a weapon. The battle for their family was far from over. Upstairs, she could hear Lily crying. Emma headed for the elevator, knowing that the conversation they were about to have would be one of the hardest of her life. But Lily deserved the truth, even if it hurt. Some mothers love their children. Others see them as opportunities. Lily needed to know the difference, and Emma would make sure she never confused the two again. The war for their family had just begun. Emma found Lily curled up in the window seat of her bedroom, staring out at the gardens with tears streaming down her face. The dollhouse Richard had bought her sat untouched, its perfect little family frozen in miniature happiness that seemed to mock their reality. "She didn't want me back at all, did she?" Lily's voice was so small Emma had to strain to hear it. "She just wanted money." Emma positioned her wheelchair close to the window seat and held out her arms. Lily immediately crawled into her lap, despite being almost too big for it, and Emma held her tight while she cried. "Some people don't know how to love properly, Lily. It doesn't mean you're not lovable. It means they're broken inside." "But she's my mama," Lily sobbed. "Mamas are supposed to love their babies." Emma's heart broke for her little sister. At 8 years old, Lily was learning lessons about human nature that most adults struggle to understand. Real mamas do love their babies. But sometimes the people who give birth to us aren't our real families. Sometimes our real families are the people who choose to love us every single day. "Like you choose to love me." "Like I choose to love you," Emma confirmed, pressing a kiss to the top of Lily's head. "Like Dad is learning to love both of us. Like Margaret loves us even though we drive her crazy with all our questions." They sat together in comfortable silence until Richard appeared in the doorway, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "Girls, we need to talk. About Sandra. About what happens next." Emma helped Lily settle back on the window seat but kept hold of her hand. "Lily heard everything, Dad. She knows Sandra was using her." Richard's jaw tightened. "That woman is going to pay for what she's done to you, Lily. I promise you that." "What about Marcus?" Emma asked. "Sandra mentioned he wants money too. Who is he?" "Sandra's boyfriend, a small-time criminal who thinks he can blackmail me." Richard's voice carried a hardness Emma had rarely heard. "He's about to learn that threatening my family was the biggest mistake of his life. What are you going to do?" "What I should have done 8 years ago. I'm going to stop hiding and start fighting. But first, there's something else you both need to know. Something about the night of Emma's accident." Emma's blood ran cold. What about it? Richard sat heavily in the chair beside them, suddenly looking every one of his 52 years. The accident wasn't an accident, Emma. Marcus was there that night. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. What do you mean? 4 years ago, Sandra and Marcus tried to blackmail me for the first time. I refused to pay, said I'd go public with everything rather than be extorted. That night, you were coming home from a sleepover at Sarah's house. Marcus was waiting in our driveway. Emma's hands began to shake. Dad, what are you saying? He meant to scare me by threatening you. But when you saw him arguing with me, when you tried to run back to get help, he panicked. He pushed you down those marble steps to stop you from calling the police. The room spun around Emma. 4 years of believing her accident was random. 4 years of her father's guilt and distance. 4 years of wondering why she'd been coming down those steps in the first place. You've known this whole time. Marcus threatened to finish what he started if I ever told anyone. He said he'd hurt you worse, maybe kill you, so I paid him. I've been paying him for 4 years, Emma. Every month, so he'd leave you alone. Lily looked between them with wide, frightened eyes. He hurt you on purpose? Emma's world was reordering itself completely. Her father's distance hadn't been guilt over the accident. It had been terror that Marcus would hurt her again. The protection, the isolation, the constant worry, it all made sense now. But now he wants more, Richard continued. 50,000, and after that, it'll be 100,000, then more. It will never end. So we stop it, Emma said, her voice surprisingly steady. We stop him. Emma, he's dangerous. So am I. Emma's green eyes flashed with determination. He stole 4 years of my life, Dad. 4 years of thinking I was broken and useless. 4 years of you being afraid to love me, because you thought showing affection would put me at risk. He's taken enough from this family. Richard stared at his daughter with amazement. Somewhere in the past few weeks, the broken, isolated girl had transformed into a warrior. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Marcus made one big mistake. He underestimated the Sterling family. Emma squeezed Lily's hand. All of us. What's the plan? Lily asked, and despite everything, Emma smiled at her little sister's eagerness to help. The plan is to give Marcus exactly what he deserves, Emma said. But first, we need to know everything about him. Everything about Sandra. Everything about what they've been doing with the money Dad's been sending. Richard pulled out his phone. I have a private investigator on retainer. His name is Detective Morrison. Morrison? Emma interrupted. Like Lily's fake last name? Sandra stole the name from our family doctor. She thought it was clever. Richard's voice was grim. But it's about to become the worst decision she ever made. Because Detective Morrison specializes in cases involving extortion and child endangerment. As Richard made the call, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in 4 years. Hope. Not just hope for walking again or hope for a normal life, but hope for justice. Hope for a future where her family could be whole and unafraid. Emma, Lily said quietly, are you really going to make the bad people go away? Emma looked at her little sister, brave, damaged, resilient Lily, who had survived abandonment and homelessness with her spirit intact, and made a promise that she intended to keep. Yes, sweetheart, the bad people are going away forever. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over Seattle, but for the first time in years, Emma Sterling wasn't afraid of the darkness. She was ready to fight for her family, and she was going to win. Detective Jake Morrison arrived at the Sterling mansion the next morning with files thick enough to build a case and a grim expression that told Emma everything she needed to know about Marcus and Sandra's criminal history. They've been running this scam for 6 years, Morrison said, spreading photographs and documents across Richard's desk. Sandra targets wealthy men going through personal crises. Divorce, death in the family, business troubles. She seduces them, gets pregnant, then disappears until the child is old enough to be used as leverage. Emma stared at a surveillance photo of Sandra with 2 other children, both around Lily's age. There are others. 3 that we know of, all placed in foster care when their fathers stopped paying. Sandra never actually wanted to raise these children. They were always just tools for extortion. Richard's face had gone white. The other children, are they safe? They're in good homes now, but the psychological damage... Morrison shook his head. Sandra and Marcus have been careful to avoid federal charges, by keeping their operations within state lines, but they've left a trail of broken families behind them. Lily, who had been coloring quietly in the corner, looked up with those two wise green eyes. The other kids like me, did their daddies not want them either? Emma felt rage burn through her chest. No, sweetheart, their daddies didn't know about them. Sandra never told them. But my daddy knew about me? Richard knelt beside Lily's chair. I knew about you, and I wanted you so much that it scared me. I was just too afraid to keep you safe. Morrison cleared his throat. There's more. Marcus Kellner has a record: assault, drug possession, fraud. But his current operation is more sophisticated than anything he's done before. He's been using the money from Richard to fund larger schemes: identity theft, credit card fraud, even human trafficking. Emma's stomach turned. Human trafficking? Young women mostly. Promising them legitimate jobs, then forcing them into illegal situations. The money Richard's been paying has been funding genuine organized crime. Oh God, Richard whispered. I've been financing. You've been protecting your daughter, Morrison interrupted firmly. But now we have enough evidence to put both Sandra and Marcus away for decades. The question is, are you ready to testify? Emma gripped her wheelchair's armrests. What about retaliation? If we testify, won't they try to hurt us? That's why we're going to arrest them tonight. Simultaneously. Sandra first, then Marcus when he comes looking for her. Tonight? Richard's voice was tense. They're planning to leave Seattle tomorrow with your $50,000. After that, they disappear, and you'll never see justice for what they did to Emma or peace for your family. Emma looked around the room, at her father's anguished face, at Lily's innocent confusion, at the files documenting years of cruelty and manipulation. What do you need us to do? Richard, you're going to call Sandra and arrange to meet her with the money. We'll be waiting. And then? Then we end this, Morrison said simply. Your family's been held hostage for 4 years. It's time to break free. That evening, as they prepared for what Morrison called the confrontation, Emma found herself thinking about the girl she'd been 4 years ago. Confident, athletic, fearless Emma, who had run up those steps to help her father and ended up in a wheelchair because of one man's violence. But that girl was gone, and in her place was someone stronger. Someone who understood that real courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about fighting for the people you loved, even when you were terrified. Emma, Lily said, appearing in her doorway with her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. I'm scared. Me too, Emma admitted. But you know what? You know. Sometimes being scared means you're about to do something really important, like helping Daddy catch the bad people. Exactly like that. Emma held out her arms, and Lily climbed into her lap for what had become their nightly ritual. Lily, after tonight everything is going to be different, better. We're going to be a real family. We're already a real family, Lily said matter-of-factly. You picked me, remember? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Out of the mouth of an 8-year-old came the wisdom that had escaped all the adults in their situation. They were already a family, not because of blood or law or obligation, but because they had chosen each other. You're right, Emma said. We are a real family, and real families protect each other. Downstairs she could hear Richard on the phone with Sandra, his voice steady as he arranged their meeting. Detective Morrison's team was already in position around the city. By midnight, the nightmare that had held their family captive would be over. Emma held her little sister close and whispered a prayer to whatever force had brought them together. They had found each other in the darkness, and together they were about to step into the light. The war for their family was about to end, and the Sterling family was going to win. The parking garage beneath the downtown Marriott was nearly empty at 11 p.m., the fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows between the concrete pillars. Emma watched from Detective Morrison's surveillance van as her father sat alone in his Bentley, a briefcase containing $50,000 in cash on the seat beside him. She's 2 minutes out, Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. Remember, Richard, keep her talking. We need her to explicitly state the terms of the blackmail on tape. Emma's hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. Beside her, Lily sat with wide eyes, clutching her stuffed elephant and watching the monitors with an intensity that broke Emma's heart. No 8-year-old should have to witness their mother being arrested. "Lily, are you sure you want to watch this?" Emma asked gently. "I need to see," Lily said quietly. "I need to know she can't hurt us anymore." Through the van's tinted windows, they saw Sandra's red Honda pull into the parking spot across from Richard's car. Even from a distance, Emma could see the predatory confidence in the way Sandra walked toward their father, someone who had made a career out of manipulating desperate men. "Audio's coming through," Morrison said, adjusting his headphones. Sandra's voice filled the van, artificially sweet and poisonous. "Hello, Richard. You look tired." "I wonder why." Richard's voice was steady, but Emma could hear the controlled anger underneath. "You have the money." "I have it. But first I want to know something." The night Emma was hurt, Marcus pushed her down those stairs, didn't he? There was a pause and Emma held her breath. "Accidents happen, Richard. Sometimes people get hurt when they stick their noses where they don't belong." "So it wasn't an accident?" Sandra laughed, the sound sending chills down Emma's spine. "Your precious little girl was going to ruin everything, running to call the police like some kind of hero." Marcus just stopped her. Emma felt tears of rage burn her eyes, to hear her assault discussed so casually as if her shattered spine had been nothing more than an inconvenience. "And now you want $50,000 to keep quiet about Lily." "I want $50,000 because I can take it," Sandra corrected. "Because you're weak and guilty and rich. Because I know you'll pay anything to keep your reputation intact. And after tonight?" "After tonight, maybe we'll need another 50,000. Or maybe 100,000. Depends on how generous you're feeling." Emma saw Detective Morrison give the signal to his team. Through the monitors, she watched as unmarked cars quietly surrounded the parking garage exits. "What about Lily?" Richard asked. "What about what this does to her?" "What about her? She's got a rich daddy now." "She'll be fine. Even knowing that her mother never loved her, that she was just a tool for you to use." Sandra's voice turned cold. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Richard. That kid was the best investment I ever made." "Investment," Richard repeated, and Emma could hear his voice breaking. "You called your daughter an investment." "I called her what she is, a means to an end, just like the others." That was enough. Morrison gave the final signal, and suddenly the parking garage erupted with movement. Police officers emerged from behind cars and pillars, surrounding Sandra with military precision. "Sandra Morrison, you're under arrest for extortion, child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to assault." Detective Morrison's voice boomed through a bullhorn. Through the van's monitors, Emma watched Sandra's confident facade crumble into panic and rage. She screamed obscenities at Richard, at the police, at the world that had finally caught up with her crimes. "Where's Marcus?" one of the officers asked. "Already in custody," Morrison said into his radio. "We picked him up an hour ago. He sang like a canary the moment we mentioned the federal trafficking charges." Emma felt a weight lift from her chest that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. For 4 years, Marcus Kellner had been a shadow hanging over their family, a constant threat that had shaped every decision, every interaction, every moment of fear. And now he was gone. "Is it over?" Lily asked in a small voice. "It's over, sweetheart," Emma said, pulling her sister close. "They can't hurt us anymore." But as they watched Sandra being led away in handcuffs, Emma noticed something that made her blood run cold. Sandra was looking directly at their surveillance van, and she was smiling. "Detective Morrison," Emma said urgently. "She knows we're here. She's looking right at us." Morrison followed her gaze and cursed under his breath. "How could she—" His radio crackled to life. "Morrison, we have a problem. Marcus Kellner escaped during transport. Repeat, the suspect is loose." Emma's world tilted. "But you said—" "I said we arrested him. I didn't say we still had him." Morrison was already barking orders into his radio. "All units, code red. Suspect is armed and dangerous. Has a personal vendetta against the Sterling family." Through the monitors, they could see Sandra laughing as she was pushed into the police car. She had known. Somehow she had known that Marcus would escape, that this wasn't over. "Dad," Emma whispered, watching Richard step out of his car, unaware that the danger was just beginning. That's when they heard the gunshot. The sound of shattering glass mixed with screams as Emma watched her father dive behind his car, a spider web of cracks spreading across the Bentley's rear window where the bullet had struck. Marcus Kellner emerged from behind a concrete pillar 50 yards away, a pistol in his hand, and 4 years of rage contorting his face. "Get down!" Detective Morrison shouted, pushing Emma and Lily to the floor of the van. "All units, shots fired. Suspect is armed in the parking garage." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she heard more gunshots, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like thunder. Through the van's small window, she could see muzzle flashes and police officers taking cover behind their vehicles. "I want my money, Sterling." Marcus's voice carried across the garage, unhinged and desperate. 4 years of payments, and you think you can just stop? You think you can destroy my life?" "Your life?" Richard's voice came from behind the Bentley, strong despite the circumstances. "You destroyed my family. You put my daughter in a wheelchair. Your daughter got in my way, just like you're getting in my way now." Emma felt Lily trembling beside her. "Emma, is Daddy going to be okay?" "Yes," Emma said with more confidence than she felt. "The police are here. They're going to protect him." But even as she said it, Emma could see that the situation was spiraling out of control. Marcus had positioned himself where he could see all the exits, and he was moving with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. Detective Morrison spoke rapidly into his radio. "We need SWAT down here now. Suspect has high ground and clear sight lines. We can't get close enough for a clean shot." Emma watched her father trapped behind his car, pinned down by a madman who had already stolen 4 years of their lives. The police were well trained and well armed, but Marcus knew the garage layout, and he was fighting like a cornered animal. That's when Emma made a decision that would either save her family or destroy it. "Detective Morrison, I need to get to that service elevator." "What?" "Emma, absolutely not. You're staying right here where it's safe." "Look at the garage layout," Emma said, pointing to the security monitor that showed the building's blueprints. "That elevator leads to the mechanical room. From there, I can access the PA system for the entire garage." So Marcus doesn't know this garage, but I do. My physical therapy appointments are in this building. I've been coming here twice a week for 4 years. Emma's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "I can talk to him. I can get him to focus on me instead of Dad." "Emma, no," Lily whimpered. "Don't leave me." "I'm not leaving you, sweetheart. I'm protecting you. I'm protecting all of us." Morrison stared at her with something between admiration and horror. "Emma, you're 16 years old. This isn't your responsibility." "Yes, it is." Emma's green eyes blazed with determination. "He put me in this chair. He terrorized my family for 4 years. He threatened my little sister. This is absolutely my responsibility." Another gunshot rang out, and they heard Richard cry out in pain. "Dad!" Emma screamed, but Morrison held her back. "He's okay," Morrison said, checking his monitor. "Looks like the bullet just grazed his arm." "But Emma, we're running out of time." Emma looked at Lily's terrified face, then at the monitors showing her wounded father trapped behind a car while a madman hunted him. She thought about the past 4 years, the loneliness, the isolation, the fear that had defined their family's existence. She thought about all the birthdays and holidays and normal moments that Marcus Kellner had stolen from them. "I'm going," she said simply. "Cover me." Before Morrison could stop her, Emma opened the van door and rolled her wheelchair into the chaos of the parking garage. The sound of gunfire was deafening, but she moved with purpose toward the service elevator, her wheels silent on the smooth concrete. "Emma," she heard her father shout, "get back." But Emma Sterling had spent 4 years being protected, 4 years being kept safe, 4 years watching other people fight her battles. Tonight, she was going to face the man who had changed her life forever, and she was going to win. The elevator doors opened, and Emma disappeared inside, heading for a confrontation that would finally end the nightmare that had held the Sterling family captive. Marcus Kellner was about to learn that he had made one fatal mistake. He had underestimated a Sterling woman's capacity for courage. The final battle for their family was about to begin. The mechanical room of the Marriott was exactly as Emma remembered from her countless therapy sessions, a maze of pipes and electrical panels that most people never saw. Her wheelchair moved silently between the machinery as she made her way to the PA control panel, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Marcus could hear it 6 floors below. Through the building's security monitors, She could see the standoff continuing in the parking garage. Her father was still pinned behind his car, blood seeping through his sleeve, while Marcus held his position behind the concrete pillar. The police had him surrounded, but he was right. They couldn't get a clean shot without risking Richard's life. Emma's hands shook as she activated the PA system. The microphone felt impossibly heavy, weighted with 4 years of pain and fear and anger. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Hello, Marcus." The effect was immediate. Down in the garage, Marcus spun around, his gun searching for targets that weren't there. "I know you can hear me, so let me introduce myself properly. My name is Emma Sterling. 4 years ago, you pushed me down a flight of marble stairs and broke my spine." Marcus's voice echoed through the garage, picked up by the security cameras. "Where are you, little girl? Why don't you come down here and face me like your coward father?" Emma smiled grimly. "I'm everywhere, Marcus. I'm in the walls, in the cameras, in every system in this building. You see, while you've been hiding behind threats and violence, I've been learning about courage, about family, about what it really means to protect the people you love. You think you're smart?" Marcus laughed, but Emma could hear the fear underneath. "You're just a crippled kid in a wheelchair." "You're right. I am in a wheelchair, because of you. But you know what else I am, Marcus? I'm Richard Sterling's daughter. I'm Lily's big sister. I'm someone who has spent 4 years getting stronger while you've been getting weaker." On the monitors, Emma could see police officers moving into better positions while Marcus was distracted by her voice. "You want to know the difference between us, Marcus? You hurt children. I protect them. You destroy families. I build them. You take what doesn't belong to you. I give everything I have to keep the people I love safe." "Shut up!" Marcus screamed, firing random shots at the ceiling. "You don't know anything about me." "I know everything about you," Emma said, her voice echoing through the garage like the voice of justice itself. "I know you're a coward who preys on children. I know you're a criminal who hides behind women's skirts. I know you're a bully who only feels strong when other people are afraid." Emma paused, watching Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior on the monitors. "But most of all, I know you're finished." "I'm not finished until your whole family is dead." "Really?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're surrounded by 12 police officers. You're almost out of ammunition, and you just made terroristic threats against a minor on a recording that's being broadcast to every law enforcement agency in the state." Marcus spun wildly, finally realizing the trap he'd walked into. "You little—" "I'm also the victim whose testimony is going to put you away for the rest of your life," Emma continued relentlessly. "Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, extortion, conspiracy, child endangerment. Should I go on?" On the monitors, Emma watched Detective Morrison give the signal to his team. "But here's what I really want you to know, Marcus. You didn't break me. You made me stronger. You didn't destroy my family. You taught us what we're really worth. You didn't win. You never had a chance." "Emma," her father's voice came through the PA system, pride and love evident even in the echoing speakers. "I love you. I love you too, Dad. Both of you. That's something Marcus will never understand, what it feels like to have people who would do anything to protect you." Emma took a deep breath and delivered the final blow. "Surrender now, Marcus. It's over." For a moment, the garage was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of sirens. Then Marcus Kellner, the man who had terrorized the Sterling family for 4 years, began to laugh. "You think this is over? You think catching me ends anything?" His voice was manic, unhinged. "I'm just one part of a much bigger operation. Sandra's just one woman in a network that spans 3 states. You have no idea how many people are going to want revenge for what you've done tonight." Emma's blood ran cold. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. "But you'll never see it coming," Marcus continued, raising his gun toward Richard's hiding spot, "because you'll all be dead." The final gunshot echoed through the parking garage, but it wasn't Marcus who fired it. Detective Morrison's bullet found its mark with surgical precision, dropping Marcus Kellner before he could pull his trigger. The echoing sound of the gunshot was followed by a silence so profound that Emma could hear her own heartbeat through the PA system. "Suspect down," Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Medical team to the parking garage. Officer needs medical attention." Emma's hands shook as she released the microphone and headed back to the elevator. Her gambit had worked. Marcus was neutralized, her father was alive, but his final words echoed in her mind. A network spanning 3 states. More people who would want revenge. By the time she reached the parking garage, paramedics were treating her father's gunshot wound while Detective Morrison coordinated the crime scene. Richard saw her emerge from the elevator, and his face went white with a mixture of relief and terror. "Emma, what were you thinking? You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," Emma said simply, rolling her wheelchair to his side. "And now it's really over." "No," Richard said, wincing as the paramedic cleaned his wound. "You heard what he said. There are others." Detective Morrison approached them, his expression grim but satisfied. "Actually, there aren't. Not anymore." Emma stared at him. "What do you mean?" "While you were playing psychological warfare upstairs, brilliant work, by the way, my team was executing simultaneous raids across Washington, Oregon, and California. Sandra's network was 3 other couples running similar scams. All in custody as of 20 minutes ago." "All of them?" Richard's voice was disbelieving. "Every single one. Marcus's confession gave us everything we needed. Locations, names, bank accounts, even the identities of the other children they'd used as leverage." Morrison's smile was grimly satisfied. "It's a clean sweep, the nightmare's over." Emma felt something inside her chest release, a tension she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. The other children will be reunited with their biological fathers or placed in good homes. Social Services is already working with family reunification specialists. In the surveillance van, Lily was waiting with wide, frightened eyes. The moment she saw Emma and Richard approaching, she launched herself from her seat and ran to them, wrapping her small arms around both of them in a fierce hug. "Is it really over?" she whispered. "It's really over," Emma confirmed, holding her sister tight. "No more bad people, no more being afraid. Just us." Richard knelt down despite his wounded arm and gathered both his daughters close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry I let fear keep me from being the father you both deserved. I'm sorry I let Marcus control our lives for so long. I'm sorry I almost lost both of you because I was too weak to fight." "You weren't weak, Dad," Emma said firmly. "You were protecting us the only way you knew how. But we're stronger together than any of us are alone." 6 months later, the Sterling mansion had been transformed into something Emma's mother would have recognized. A home filled with laughter, warmth, and the sound of a family that had learned what really mattered. Lily was thriving in school, her natural intelligence no longer overshadowed by trauma and abandonment. She'd made friends easily, and watching her experience the simple joy of a childhood birthday party had brought tears to both Emma's and Richard's eyes. Richard had scaled back his business empire, choosing to work from home most days so he could be present for bedtime stories, homework help, and the 1,000 small moments that make up a family's life. The pharmaceutical company still thrived under his leadership, but it no longer owned his soul. And Emma had discovered that her real strength had never been in her legs. It was in her heart, her mind, and her fierce capacity to love and protect the people who mattered most. "Emma," Lily said one evening as they worked on a jigsaw puzzle in the library, "do you ever wish things had been different? That you could walk and we'd met some other way?" Emma considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally, "because if things had been different, we might never have found each other, and finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than having working legs." "Especially better than having working legs," Emma confirmed. "Legs can only carry you places, Lily. Love carries you through everything." Outside, snow was beginning to fall on Seattle, covering the city in pristine white. But inside the Sterling mansion, a family sat by the fireplace, finally at peace with the knowledge that they had chosen each other, fought for each other, and won. Marcus Kellner and Sandra Morrison were serving life sentences in federal prison. The other children in their network had found loving homes. And the Sterling family had learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most difficult circumstances. Emma Sterling had started as a lonely girl in a wheelchair, trapped in a mansion that felt like a prison. She had become the hero of her own story, the protector of her family, and proof that courage isn't about what your body can do, It's about what your heart is willing to fight for. The question that had started it all, could she be my sister, had led them through darkness and danger to a truth more beautiful than any of them had dared to hope. Sometimes families are born, sometimes they're built. The Sterling family had been forged in fire, and they were unbreakable.